Welcome, I'm Charles Bernard, and this video is all about color wheels and color gamut masks. Now, if you don't know what a color gamut mask is, then this is where you're going to find out exactly what it is and how it is made. And you'll learn about different kinds of color wheels as well that you're going to need to use in order to be able to create these color gamut masks. Now, before I begin with the lesson, I just want to mention, for those of you who want to learn a lot more about color than what you're going to be learning about in this one video, then you might want to check out my complete illustration art course that will teach you more about color, but not just about color. It will teach you about all of the other fundamentals of art that you're going to need to know if you ever hope to become a really good or great artist. And all of those things you'll learn from my course called the Complete Illustration Art Course. And you'll find that course at my online art school. It's called Online Art Academy. And now it's time to begin this lesson. Here you see two different color wheels. There is what is called the Roy G Biv wheel, which is on the left side, and Roy G Biv stands for red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And then there is the RGB wheel, which you see on the right, and RGB, of course, stands for red, green, and blue, which are the primary colors for light, as opposed to the primary colors for pigment, which are red, yellow, and blue. For this video, I'm mostly going to be focusing on the color wheel on the left, which is the Roy G Biv color wheel, and not on the RGB color wheel. Now, there are many different kinds of color wheels, and I'm sure you've seen all sorts of different color wheels. The one that's usually used to learn about color is not so much the Roy G Biv or the RGB color wheel, but rather it is more like this color wheel here, which you've probably seen, or one that's similar to this. So this is considered the more standard color wheel, but in this video I want to focus on using the Roy G Biv color wheel with all its variations of color and all the different kinds of grade colors that can be found within a color wheel like this. Now, the RGB color wheel I'm not going to be concerned with. So it's just this color wheel here. But before I go on, if you look over here where the arrows are, you can see the RGB color wheel is a more compressed range of colors from yellow to violet. While in the Roy G Biv color wheel, you can see that that color range extends more from the yellow to the violet. There's a greater range of colors there, not as compressed as for the RGB color wheel. So I'm going to just eliminate the RGB since I'm not concerned with showing you how to use that one, and I'll just focus on the Roy G Biv color wheel. Many different artists have many different ways of achieving great color, and using the Roy G Biv color wheel is just one of many different ways through which great color can be achieved. Now, if you want to try and do what I'm going to be showing you in this video about how to get really great color, then you're going to need this Roy G Biv color wheel. Now, where do you get it? Well, if you go to Google and type in Roy G Biv wheel, you should be able to locate it. And once you've located it, download it and then bring it into your painting software or Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop. And then you'll be able to work with it there. And then trying to apply what you're going to be learning in this video on how to use this color wheel. And I think you're going to be surprised at the result, because this is a very effective way through which you can get really great color. So as you can see, I've eliminated the RGB color wheel since I won't be using that, and it's the Roy G Biv color wheel that you see here, which I'll be showing you how to use throughout the video, except for one part of the video in which I will talk more about how to use a more traditional color wheel like this, although the one that I'll be showing you will be somewhat different. Now with the Roy G Biv color wheel, you see all of these beautiful grayed colors that are within that circle here. There's a large variety of different beautiful grayed colors that can be used when using the Roy G Biv color wheel. And you don't see that sort of thing in this kind of color wheel here, where you don't see that kind of gradation of color from more saturated color grading toward more grayed colors. So you have a greater range of different colors that you can choose from when you're using a Roy G Biv color wheel than if you use a color wheel like this, in which you don't have that kind of beautiful gradation of colors, moving from more saturated color to more grayed colors. Now the colors that are part of the Roy G Biv color wheel are the same colors that you find within this more traditional color wheel. All sorts of different color schemes can be arrived at by applying different configurations to a color wheel such as this or the Roy G Biv color wheel. For example, if I applied this kind of configuration, the triangle, to this color wheel, I end up with a color scheme that consists of the main colors red, blue, and of course yellow. These colors are very difficult to harmonize since they are so far apart on the color wheel. But it gives you some idea of different kinds of color schemes that can be arrived at by applying different configurations. So I could also apply a configuration that is like this, for example. Just connecting the blue over here and the orange over here. And that gives me a complementary color scheme. The two colors are complementary. Or I could apply a configuration that is like this, a rectangle, and that gives me these colors here. The orange, the yellow, the blue over here, and the violet over here. So for this color scheme, the painting would consist of 4 main colors. And the colors that you select using these different kinds of configurations are the main colors that are part of the color scheme. And then of course you have all sorts of additional variations of these colors within your color scheme. But I'm not going to get into that here. Although when you look over here to the Roy G Biv color wheel, you can get a lot of different variations because these colors run from more saturated colors at the edges to more grayed colors as they move toward the center. So you can get a lot of different variations of colors here that you can't get when using this kind of more standard color wheel that you see here. So you can apply that same idea of different configurations to this color wheel. So I could do something like this, for example, also a rectangle, and I have 4 colors that I would be using in the color scheme, plus all of the colors or color variations in grays that are found within that rectangle shape right there. All those beautiful grayed colors that I can use within my painting. Here is another version of the standard color wheel that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to be using this to explain some things about this color wheel and how to use it. The colors at the peripherals or toward the edges are more saturated, and then the colors become more gray as they move toward the center. Now this color wheel is good for when you are painting a picture using paint, actual pigments, because here you can more clearly see the separations of the colors running from more saturated color to more grayed color, while over here they all blend together more. So it's more difficult to find a color that you can mix with paint. So I'll just give you a quick example here of how to use a color mask on this color wheel and how to mix your colors according to that color mask. The colors that you see here are the colors that you see in this color wheel as well. And they are yellow, yellow-green, green, blue-green, blue, blue-violet, violet, red-violet, red, red-orange, orange, and yellow-orange. Now when it comes to creating a color mask, this is what you need to do. So I'm going to add a new layer here, and on this layer I'm going to make a selection. I'm going to select that color wheel like this with this circle. Then I'm going to go to the color picker and select black. Now I'm going to fill that selection with black. And now I'm going to change the opacity so that I can see the color wheel underneath. There it is. Now the way you create a color mask is very simple. All you need to do is cut out a part of that color wheel. So I could do something like this. Select all of that and then delete that portion. So what I've done is I've cut out a portion from the mask. All of this is the mask, and this is what I cut out from the mask, which shows me the colors that I need to mix with my paint if I'm working with actual pigment, with actual paints. So I know that, for example, this color here is a saturated color that I could use, and I'm only going to use the colors that are selected here from that mask. And then I have the yellow that I can use, and the green. I'm picking up those colors from the color wheel. So what you would be doing is you would be mixing those colors on your palette if you're working with actual paint. And once you've mixed all of these colors, then you can go ahead and paint your picture using those colors that you mixed, that run from more saturated color to more grayed or neutralized color. So you would be using all of these colors, which are, of course, all of these that I selected from that mask, and you wouldn't go outside of those colors. You would just use those colors that are within that portion that you selected from the mask. Now what I've done here is referred to as gamut mapping. This is a gamut of colors that can be used to do your painting with. They make up the color scheme. They show you, that portion that I selected shows you the range of colors that can be used. You don't go beyond that range, as I mentioned. You stay within that range. And why use a gamut map? Because a gamut map will enable you to easily achieve harmony as well as contrast of color. Beautiful harmonies of color can be established with a gamut map. And if you look over here, you can see not only harmony between the greens and yellow, but also contrast of color, because this orange color that you see here contrasts more sharply in hue with the green. They're not as closely related to each other as the greens and the yellow. So within a gamut map, you can find beautiful harmonies of color as well as varying degrees of contrasting color. More strongly contrasting color or less strongly contrasting color, depending on what portion of the mask you select, which colors you want to use in your painting. So I added another mask, and I need to change the opacity so that I can see the color wheel underneath. And this time I can select a different portion of that mask. I can select all sorts of different portions through different shapes that I create. So I could just make a sliver of a shape like that, right across. and just delete that, cut that out, and there's my gamut of colors. Now I know which colors I need to mix. Now the thing is, this color wheel can of course also be used when working with a computer. It's not that you can only use this color wheel. As you can see, there are all these smooth gradations of color that you don't find here. Here you find these individual steps ranging from more saturated color to a neutral gray in the middle. But in this color wheel, there are more colors to choose from, running from the more saturated color toward the more neutral color in the center. So this is the color wheel that I'm going to be using to show you how to create a color scheme using a gamut map. So let's say I'm using this color wheel not only to mix my colors with actual paint, but I decided to use it for doing a painting in Photoshop, which I can do. So what I would do is I'd select the colors that are within that gamut, as I mentioned. So I have a green, and then I have a green that is a bit less saturated. And then I pick up the next green, which is this one, which is even less saturated. And then I pick up another green, which is more neutralized, like that. So I have these range of greens, and then I can skip over to the red here and add that red to the green. And then I could pick up a more desaturated red right there and add that. And that looks more like a red-violet, leaning toward red-violet. And then I can select, let's say, this color here. You see, so I have this range of different colors that I can work with, as long as I'm selecting the colors that are within that gamut. And here's a more saturated green that leans a bit more toward the yellow-green, and then a more desaturated green right there. So I can end up with a beautiful harmony of color as well as contrasting color that is within that harmony. And this would make it possible to create really beautiful looking paintings in color. So here's another black shape that I added over the color wheel, which I need to reduce in its opacity so that I can see the color wheel underneath. And when you make your selections as to which colors you want to use, you can do that using geometric shapes, like for example a triangle here. I selected that triangle, and then I can cut that triangle out of the mask, thereby giving me this gamut of colors that I can then use in my painting. So this is my color scheme. And I can use these colors painting a picture in Photoshop, or I can mix these colors with my paint and use actual paint to paint my picture with. So instead of a triangle, you could use, let's say, an oval like that. Cut a portion of the mask out with a oval, giving me the colors for the color scheme. Or I don't have to use any kind of geometric shape. I could make a shape more like this. And there are my colors, the color gamut that I can use for my painting. Now, you can select colors that are more harmonious, that is, let's say, colors from one side of the color wheel, like this. So I cut that portion out. Those are the colors that I would use, but I don't have any strong contrasting colors or contrasting hues here. These are very closely related analogous colors. So if I want more contrast of colors, then I would select a shape that runs across the color wheel, something like this, and cut that portion out. Now I have more strongly contrasting hues because I have the reds and oranges over here and the greens over on this side, creating stronger contrast of hue. But I also have a harmony of hues because this green here and the next one down and the next one down, they're all harmonious. And then over here I have a little bit of that yellow that I can add. That's also in harmony with the greens. and then I have a more desaturated yellow, and then I can come over here and add a more contrasting color like this desaturated orange, and then I can add a stronger contrasting hue into all of this harmony here. So I can have a color scheme that embodies both more harmony but also more contrast of colors. You can arrive at really beautiful color schemes using this idea of gamut mapping. I'm going to add black to this selection that I have in order to be able to create this mask, just like I showed you in that other color wheel. And I need to reduce the opacity, something like that, but I still need to see the colors underneath. And now I can cut a portion out of this mask, just like I did with the other color wheel. And you can use geometric shapes, or you can just make selections like this, in which you just make these kind of shapes, like that. Cut that out, and there's my color gamut. As with this color wheel here, you can make your selection in terms of a triangle or a circle or oval or some kind of irregular shape like this even. But usually I think it's best if you make this kind of shape that runs from one side of the color wheel to the other, and then to another part of the color wheel. That also limits the number of colors that you're going to be using, and you'll still be able to get a nice variety of colors and good color contrast. So for example, I could cut another shape out that's like this, for example. And I could use that. These colors right here that fall within my selection. So that would be my color gamut. So what do those colors look like when I add them up here? So there's one color. Then moving down the color wheel toward the center, the colors become more and more desaturated, just like in this example here. But here in this RGB color wheel, I have a greater range of different colored grays. Here, for example, in this section, there aren't that many varied grays. There are a few, but over here there's quite a few, and then they run into another color, moving toward the blue or more cyan color. See, coming down like that, you can see the color change up here to more of a blue-green actually. It's not cyan, it's more blue-green, becoming more green, a bit more green, like that. And then I can come over here to that portion of the color wheel and select that color, and now I have a strong contrasting yellow-orange with the red-violet that you see here. And then moving down that shape, that narrow shape, the color changes and it becomes more greenish. So I have this wide variety of different colors with different amounts of saturation, creating variety of color. See, that color is really desaturated. And then I can come over here and select this color, and the colors that are at the peripherals, as I mentioned, or toward the edge of the color wheel, are more saturated. So you can see right here that that green that I picked up over here is a saturated green. The color becomes more desaturated, and it also changes value. It's becoming a darker value as well, moving more and more toward a more neutralized color, like you see here. See this beautiful range of color that I have. And it all is part of this color gamut that I've selected here. What you can also do with this color wheel here, when you have your color gamut and you're using these various colors within the color gamut, you don't have to necessarily just stick to the color that you've selected from the color gamut, like this, for example. I can mix that color with other colors within the color gamut. Like, for example, if I picked up that green that is part of that color gamut and I added it to the red violet, just a little bit like that, and then I mixed the two together, and that grays that red violet. It reduces its saturation. Or I could use that red violet and then mix a yellow with it, and that also will gray that red violet, but give me a slightly different grayed red violet, a warmer one, because I mixed a warmer color with it. And in this case here, I mixed a cooler color, the green, with the red violet. So in this way you can extend the range of your colors even more. You're not limited to just picking that color from the color wheel and using it as it is. You can mix it with other colors within that color wheel or that color gamut and then arrive at different colors. So if I selected this portion, let's say this portion here of the color wheel, I can mix this orange, this yellow orange here, with the green over there. I can mix those two together and I get a slightly different hue, one that is more grayed. When you mix yellow, orange, and green together, the yellow orange is more grayed and it leans a little toward the green. Or I could mix the green with the yellow, thereby arriving at more of a yellow green. So you see, you can mix the colors that are within the gamut that you selected, the color gamut. You can mix them together and arrive at yet a greater range of different colors that you can use in your painting. Now you might be thinking, well, how do I get this color wheel here? Well, what you could do is you could make a screenshot of this color wheel, because you're going to need a printout of this color wheel that you have next to you when you're mixing your paints. So you could make a screenshot of this and then print it out. This would give you a hard copy of this color wheel. Or you could go to Google, type in color wheels, and you should be able to find a color wheel that looks like this, and then use that to print out so that you have a hard copy, and you can place that next to your palette and then try matching the colors that are on the color wheel and intermixing them as I showed you here in order to arrive at yet an even greater range of different colors or different hues. But they are all within the color gamut that you select. You don't go outside of that color gamut. The next thing to do is to place some kind of semi-transparent paper over the color wheel, such as, for example, vellum paper. So something like this. Let's say this is the vellum, and I'm enlarge this a bit, and then you select the colors that you want to use in your painting, and you draw with a pencil or a pentel right over that vellum like this. Let's say this, like that. So you're drawing this triangle shape, or it could be some other shape. Many times, however, the artist is going to use a triangle because the triangle covers a greater range of colors on the color wheel that you'll be able to use. So once you have that drawn on the vellum paper, then what you need to do is cut it out. So I selected this, and I'm just going to cut this out now, like that. So you cut that shape out of the vellum paper, and you'll be able to see the colors of the color wheel underneath, like this, underneath the this mask, which is the vellum paper.
So now you have your gamut map, as it's also referred to. You have a gamut of colors here that you then mix on your palette, and you can intermix these colors as I've shown you to arrive at a wide variety of different colors that you then use in your painting, like this. And I even have this neutral here. That's a true neutral. It's a gray. And then I have these other colors that I can mix. I can mix all of these colors on my palette that are part of this gamut. And then all I need to do is just come over to the mixtures, pick them up, and add them to my painting. I already have the colors mixed, like this, and so on. So within this gamut of colors, you'll have beautiful harmonies of color as well as color contrast when the shape for the gamut mask extends across the color wheel like I've shown you here, including some contrasting colors. Once you have your shape cut out of a mask like this, you can then rotate that shape on the color wheel like this and end up with different colors that you can then use as your color scheme for your painting. And you can just keep rotating it like that around the color wheel to get new colors. So you can keep that same shape and just rotate it around, and you'll be able to arrive at different colors that you can then use for your painting. So then I can mix those colors on my palette that I see within that color gamut, like this, mixing all those colors. And again, just like in this example over here, once I have all my colors on my palette that correspond to that color gamut, then I can start doing my painting with those colors, and I can also then intermix these colors as well, as I've shown you. So that would be the colors of my color scheme, just as these colors here would be the colors of my color scheme. So just as I rotated this triangle shape on this color wheel to give me a new set of colors, I can do the same thing on the Roy G Biv color wheel, whereby, for example, I rotate this irregular shape that I created, let's say to the left or to the right, which will then give me a new set of colors for my color scheme that I can apply to my painting. One of the things that you could do in order to bring all of the colors into an even greater harmony and thereby achieving a stronger unity of color is to use what is called a mother color. What does that mean? That means that you select one of the colors from your color gamut, which becomes the mother color, which you then apply to all of the other colors that you mix. So here's the green, and then I have a more desaturated green, and then I have this violet color, and then I have the red here. So now I'm going to select a mother color. Now the mother color, let's say, is red. That red color will then be added to all of the other colors. So therefore, I could add a little bit of that red to the green, like this, mix it together. It grays the green a bit, depending on how much of that red I add to the green will depend on how desaturated that green becomes. And then I add that red also to this violet color here, like that. And I also add it to this more desaturated green, leaning a bit more toward the blue-green. So all of these colors now have red within them. So I'm going to do a quick little thumbnail sketch so that you can see this idea being applied to an actual painting. So let's say I pick up this color from the color gamut, which is a blue, and it's a desaturated blue. And then I'll use the green within that color gamut that I just picked up, and then a darker value, but I don't have a darker value. So what I can do is go to my magic picker, and if you're working with paint, you're going to have to darken that color, which is what I'm doing now, as you can see. But with the magic picker, it's easy to darken it by just adding black within the magic picker. So let's say this is just a row of trees, like this. And I'm doing this really quick, as you can see. So there are these trees here, dark value. And this gamut here actually is a gamut that's more suited to an overcast day, a gray day, a darker value key. And then what I can do is add the mother color. Now what would the mother color be here? Well, I could, let's say, have the mother color be blue. So here's the blue, but it's a bit too desaturated, so I can increase the saturation a bit like that. It's okay to do that as long as you stay within the color gamut in terms of what the hues of that color gamut are. So one of those hues is blue, so therefore I can use that blue, and then I'll add that blue to the green here, mixing it into the green like that, as well as mixing some of the blue into the distant trees like this, changing that green a bit thereby. So the green of the grass here has some of the blue in it. The green of the trees in the background has some of the blue in it. And of course the sky already has blue in it. But if I want to make that sky a bit more saturated in color, I could add a little bit of that more saturated blue like this. And then I can come over here to my color gamut and maybe select this red, and maybe there's this little farmhouse here. Now I need a darker red, but I don't have that darker red over here in this color gamut, so I can come over here to my color, or magic picker rather, and select a darker red for the shadow side. And then if I don't want the mother color, the blue, to appear within that red, I can do that. And if I do that, the red then appears stronger, more saturated, but if it's too strong, I just add a little bit of that mother color to the red like I'm doing now, and it desaturates that red a bit. And just do a quick drawing here, add some lines to that little farmhouse there. So all of these colors so far contain the mother color, which is blue, and I need a darker color for the cast shadow. So again, I can mix a darker color. If you're using paint, you can mix that darker value if you need it. If you don't find it within the color gamut, as long as you stay within the hues of that color gamut, you'll be okay. So I added that cast shadow there, and then in the foreground I need a darker green. So what I can do is come over here to my magic picker and select a darker, this is actually a blue green because I added a little bit of blue to that green, and now I have a darker blue green that I can add to the foreground like that. So I don't have to add any blue to that darker blue green because it already has blue in it. Maybe there's some bushes in the foreground here. And there's a little path like that going to the farmhouse. So all of these colors contain some blue. And I can add a bit more blue to the shadow side of the farmhouse. Add that mother color to the shadow side, like that. So this is really rough, but I think you understand this idea of using a mother color. And it brings all of the colors into a greater harmony and creates a more unified looking color scheme.
Now here's how you should approach this when you do an actual painting. The first thing you need to do is work out some kind of color scheme with thumbnail sketches. So you do a lot of these thumbnail sketches until you find a color combination that you want to apply to your painting. So here I'm going to just quickly do some thumbnail sketches, and I'll use my magic picker. So let's say one of them has a red sky, and then there's this mountain, this green mountain. There's a lot of vegetation on this mountain, trees and grass. On top of the mountain, let's say there's this castle, dark castle, dark red with a lighter red, like that. And then the mountains in the background, the blue of the mountains, and then a shadow on the side of this mountain on which the castle sits. So that's it. Just a simple color scheme like this, in which you select a few main colors for your color scheme. Then you do another one. If this one doesn't seem to work for you, you do another one. So in this one, let's say the sky is blue, a more desaturated blue, let's say. And then the mountain is more of this red-orange color, but a desaturated red-orange, darker color like that. And then the top of the mountain, maybe a green castle with a brighter green, and that brighter green is where the light is hitting that castle. Now if that doesn't work, then you try yet a different color scheme. In this one, let's say a more romantic mood. So colors like red, violet, and violet are appropriate for a more romantic feeling. So maybe the sky has this red violet, and then somewhat of a blue violet maybe for the mountain, dark blue violet like this. And then the castle is more of a reddish color, although it's better if it's more red-violet. Something like this with a lighter red-violet where the sun is falling on that castle. And that's it, just a simple thumbnail sketch like that. That's all you really need to determine whether this color scheme is appropriate for what you have in mind or not, whether it's going to work or not. So after you've established what your color scheme is going to be, then you come over to the Roy G Biv color wheel, and you then select the colors that are going to be part of your color gamut, as it's called. So I think it'll be something like this. Now a little further up, include some reds. Down here to some violets and blue violets. And then down here toward the cyan. And then back up again like that. Now, you don't just necessarily have to select a shape or a gamut that is only on one side of the color wheel. It could extend right across the color wheel. Could be something like this, for example. Or you have the color gamut on one side like that, but then you can select a smaller piece on the other side. Something like that. Use your imagination. All sorts of shapes are possible. So I think I'm going to cut this shape out and that shape. Cut it out of this mask that is over the RGB color wheel. So I cut out those shapes, and there's my color map, which results in my color gamut that I'll be using for my rough color sketch. So the rough color sketch, I'll start over here with just some line drawing and very rough. So this is my format shape, and I'll select that shape like this, and then I can paint in there, and I won't go over the edge. So to begin with, I can start with, let's say, a bright color, and that would be my base. Now you're saying, well, why are you starting with such a bright color? Well, because when I lay over more desaturated color, that bright color is going to peek through, and the color will almost glow. So after having established this imprimatura, as it's also referred to, or toned the surface on which I'm going to paint, different names, then I can just roughly sketch in the castle, and I'm just roughing this in. As you can see, the castle sitting on this mountain here, and there are these stairs leading up to the castle, and then further back over here there are some mountains. So this is just really rough. That's all I really need, because this is just, after all, a rough color sketch that I'm going to be doing. The next color that I'm going to add, again, is one of the colors from my color wheel here, the color gamut that I selected, and it's going to be this blue-violet. However, that blue-violet isn't dark enough, so when I put it over on the castle, you can see what it looks like, and it's not dark enough and not desaturated enough. So what I can do is go to my magic picker and then just select a darker version of that blue-violet, something like this. You see, you can do that. You are not restricted to only what appears within the color gamut here. That is, in terms of value and saturation. So if I need a color that is darker than what is to be found within the color gamut, I can go to my magic picker or the color picker and select a darker version of that color, as I did here. See, the problem is you're not always going to find the right value within that color gamut, and even sometimes not the right saturation. So you can do what I'm doing here. You can select a different value or even a different saturation of that color, but it has to be the same color. Otherwise, if you select a different color, like a green, for example, which is not part of this color gamut, then you're going outside the color gamut. And that you shouldn't be doing, because then you'll destroy the color gamut. You'll destroy the color scheme. And let me see, add a few more of these here. And I'm doing this in real time, so it's going to be very rough. This is not a finished painting. So the thing is, I'm adding the darks. After putting down a middle value, I then add the darks, and then for the mountain, go back to my color gamut and select maybe this color here, but again, it's not going to be dark enough, so I'm going to have to use my magic picker to select a darker value, and I'll just add that quickly down here. The idea is to just cover the whole picture area quickly with large masses of color. And then, let's say, a lighter version for that part of the mountain which is receiving more light, this part right here. And you can see that that really highly saturated red-violet color that I put down as my base color is peeking through and adding more color variety. And it helps to light up the colors because that base color is so highly saturated. Now, if that's too light, then I can go in there with a darker value, something like this. And even darker. Then for the sky, I'll come over here to my color gamut and select a blue for the sky, or maybe more of this kind of color, a bit more of a violet. Add that again, letting some of that bright color underneath peek through. not covering it up completely. Then I can select a color that's more of a blue, either a bit more desaturated, and through through simultaneous color contrast, the colors are going to appear different than what you think they might be on the color gamut. A color that looks blue on the color gamut might start to look more green when you add it to the other colors within the painting. And that's due to what's called simultaneous color contrast, which I'm not going to get into here. So I'm going to add some of that blue to the sky as well, and in different parts where the shadow is on the mountain. And then I'm going to select a brighter or more saturated red-violet. Place that over here like this. Now the values aren't right yet, so I'm going to add more of the blue to the sky. And this is going to take a while. This isn't done in a couple of minutes. Adding some more of that violet color. And I think what I'm also going to do is outline some of these shapes here so that it looks more like there's a castle here. There's a wall, and then right there, there's the entrance to the castle. So you can add some kind of rough sketch like this so that you have some lines that will guide you as to where to place the paint. And what you also need to do is check your values. Make sure your values are correct. And I think that's fine. Just this one huge dark shape against the lighter background that you see here, like that. And then I need to add a lighter value, which is this accent. This is an accent color, which I could add to some parts of this castle. So some of the parts of the castle is receiving strong sunlight, and the shadows are violet. So I'm using color more imaginatively here rather than more literally. And using color more imaginatively can result in being able to create certain moods, certain feelings that you just can't get if you're too literal with the color. So the colors in the color gamut, they're all related, closely related, creating harmony. And then I have this strong accent color in the painting, which provides drama and a great deal of interest. Don't have all your colors nicely harmonizing with each other without having also some strong contrasting color like I've introduced here with this yellow-orange. And there are a lot of different colors within this gamut that I could be using. Grays and more saturated colors, like this more saturated red-violet that I'm adding here like this. There are a lot of color possibilities, but you can see how beautifully harmonious these colors are. And then you have that strong note of yellow-orange creating a strong accent color, which adds a lot of interest. And then I need to add some kind of steps like that leading up to the castle. And then I'm going to repeat that accent color down here like this. Maybe there's this guy, he's on the steps and he's on his way up to the castle. And this helps to draw the eye down here to another part of the painting. So once you move up to where the castle is, you don't want the eye of the viewer to get stuck in one place and not move around the painting and explore other parts of the painting. So you need a contrast somewhere else in the painting, one or more, to which the eye of the viewer can go so that the viewer can explore the entire painting. And I might even add something else maybe over here to draw the eye over there as well. Not sure yet. So if I add something like that over there, then I've created this arrangement of these yellow-orange colors that make this triangle shape. Now, this is where color design comes in, but I'm not going to go into color design here. If you want to learn about color design, then check out my complete illustration art course. Matter of fact, you're also going to need to know color design, because just knowing how to create these color gamuts isn't enough to get really great color. You also need to apply color design. But this is a starting point. This is how you begin, by creating these color gamuts which give you beautiful harmonies of color. So far you've seen me lay in these big masses of color and all of the various colors that are found within that color gamut. But I'm going to carry this rough color sketch a bit further. However, you're not going to be seeing me work on it and carry it to a more advanced stage, but it's still going to be a rough color sketch. If I showed you the additional work that I'm going to be doing, this video would run way too long. So therefore, I'm going to jump ahead and show you the additional work that I did on this rough color sketch. But here in these stages, I wanted to show you the colors that I was picking up from that color gamut and how I was applying that color. You see me applying the color in large color masses, and I'm not concerned with detail, and everything looks more abstract and loose. This is how you begin. This is how your initial stages should look. Don't tighten up too early. The tightening up comes later, after you've applied the big masses of color and value. Don't add any details in these early stages. If you want to know what the entire process is for painting a picture, then check out my complete illustration art course. You're going to need to know some kind of method. If you don't have a method for arriving at a finished painting, then you're going to be all over the place and you won't proceed in an orderly way, and the result is going to be, I think, a pretty bad looking painting if you paint that way. You have to have some kind of logical method or procedure to follow. But I'm not going to get into that here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump ahead and show you a more advanced version of what you see here. And there's the rough color sketch, carried to a bit more of a finished painting, but it's still a pretty rough color sketch. It's not a finished painting, but you can see quite a difference from this version. But the colors you see here are still the colors that are found within the finished rough color sketch. The values have been changed somewhat, and if you look at these values, some of the values have been made darker and some made lighter, but the colors are the colors that I have within my color gamut here, including this color accent. So this gives you some idea of what can be done with this color gamut alone. Now, if I had used the same colors within this color gamut in different proportions within this painting, it would look different. So instead of having, let's say, this violet here, or blue violet for the mountain, if I used the blue instead of the blue violet, and this actually looks more like a blue green, if I had used that in a larger area, and then the sky maybe would be this color, really bright, saturated sky. If I use those colors in different proportions, the painting would be different. It would look different. So there are many possibilities within this gamut alone, depending on how you use those colors, how you distribute them, and what the proportion of those colors are. So maybe instead of the blue-violet mountain, I could make that mountain this grayed red-violet like that. So I'm using a large red-violet color, and then I'm adding a darker red-violet over here for this part. And then the castle, I could change that color so that it's more of this blue-green here. And then the sky, maybe that
could be more of this red-violet, a lighter red-violet color. See, I'm just showing you some other possibilities that reside within this color gamut. You see how beautiful these harmonies of color are that are found within that color gamut? So, in this video, I've shown you how you can create beautiful color. This is one method of many different kinds of methods that can be used to create beautiful color. But this is a very effective method if you approach this correctly, if you approach it the way I've shown you. And that's about as far as I'm going to take this video. Now it's time to end it here. However, if you want to learn all of those additional things about color that I can't show you in one video here, and those things that deal with color design, which is also what I've applied even to this rough-looking color sketch here. And that's one of the reasons why it looks so appealing. It's not just because of the harmonious color that I added, but the way I've added that color, what I've done in terms of color design that also adds to the appeal of this rough, more abstract-looking color sketch. So even if you do a rough color sketch like this, and it's abstract and loose like this, and you apply a color gamut and color design, you can make that rough, abstract-looking, loose sketch look very appealing in terms of color. So knowing how to create these color gamuts or color maps is not enough. You also need to know about color design. And you'll learn all those things in my complete illustration art course if you're interested in going further than what I've shown you here. And if you're a serious student of art who really wants to become a really good or even great artist, then you're going to want to learn more. You're going to be hungry for more knowledge. And you can get that from my complete illustration art course that can turn you from a beginner or amateur into a professional artist, into someone that really knows what they're doing. And that's the only way you're going to be able to produce great art. Great art doesn't happen by accident. It happens through the knowledge and skill that the artist has, with knowledge being the key. And of course, you have to understand that knowledge. Just knowing something isn't enough. You have to understand it as well. And now, thank you for watching. And please tell all your friends about my videos and my website, onlineartacademy.com, where you can find the complete illustration art course. Also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And now, goodbye.